Hi, and welcome in day one of SEC Football Media Days. I'm Josh Ward along with Jimmy Hyams as we've just wrapped up Radio Row, or the Radio Room, Jimmy, as everybody was kind of put in a room together. Different setting as we're in Atlanta at Omni Hotel next to the College Football Hall of Fame. Was there a storyline? Was there a talking point that stood out to you that a lot of people were bringing up today, day one at SEC Media Days?
Well, not so much talking points. I just thought it was interesting that we didn't have to fight the fans to get to Radio Row or anywhere else. So that was a little bit different. Greg Sankey talked a lot about the accomplishments that the SEC has had. It's amazing when you look at in football. The SEC has played for 11 of the last 12 national championships and won 9 of them. Somebody asked him if the revenue sharing was only going to football and why. He said, "Oh, I don't think that's true. If you look at all the sports, you look at all the accomplishments they've had. There were 5 national championships. They also won a championship in the SEC in rifle and bowling. They competed for 14 national championships or first or second place. So he kind of defended that a little bit. The gambling issue came up a little bit too. How do you deal with that? Sankey said that there would not be any injury policy this year, but they're looking at that for the future. They don't feel like they can come up with one at this point, and it's more difficult to have an injury policy in college because of HIPAA rules than it is for the NFL, the NBA, or other sports.
Yeah, that's come up. I think it will continue to the discussion on gambling, states being able to legalize that, and the impact. And also, I think at the college level, all levels, but the college level, they want to make sure everything is above board and that they're making sure that they are not doing anything wrong that could be a problem potentially in the future. The ACC already has some kind of policy, and Thursday, Jimbo Fisher said on a Thursday before a Florida State game, he's sitting down saying who's available, who's not. So I would say that there's some kind of blueprint, and I think that's going to be an even bigger talking point, gambling and the impact on college sports in the future.
Well, and the thing that they keep talking about is they need to protect the integrity of the game. One thing that Greg Sankey said is that they're going to take a look at the lines each week, and if there's a line that jumps way up or down as far as the team being favored, it catches their attention, and they're going to ask why. So that's going to be something that comes up. It was interesting at the SEC spring meeting, Scott Strickland, the athletic director at Florida, was asked about the SEC having a uniform injury policy like the NFL. And he says, so the NFL has a policy. Yeah. He says, well, do they follow it? I don't think New England does. So he was pointing that out. So it is going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
Speaking of Jimbo Fisher, by the way, his first SEC Media Days, he has plenty of experience in front of the media with what he's done at Florida State, but I don't know if it's year one. You have the SEC West schedule, just first year for the new coaching staff. Clemson's on the schedule, which is really difficult. So a school that Jimbo's familiar with coming from the ACC, but expectations quickly are going to rise, wouldn't you say, for Jimbo Fisher, one of only 4 active head coaches in college football with a national title?
Well, they rise when you're also making $75 million in 10 years.
Absolutely.
So you got to win more than 8 games, and you got to win about 10 or 12. He was asked, well, what's your timetable for winning a national championship? And he says, just whenever it happens. He mentioned that in Auburn in 1992 was 5-6. The next year, Auburn went 11-0. Now, they weren't eligible for a national championship, but he said you can turn it around that quickly. When he was on the staff at LSU, it took 3 or 4 years. When he was on the staff at Florida State, it took 3 or 4 years as a head coach. So he did point that out. But, yeah, the expectations are going to be great. He said that A&M has everything you would need, the facilities, the recruiting base in the state of Texas, the support from the administration, everything that you would need to succeed at A&M. He didn't shy away from the expectations. He also said that if you don't want to coach in the SEC West, then you're not a competitor. He said you want to go against the best, and that's one reason he accepted the invitation to coach against the West and Alabama and all those other great teams.
And then one more talking point I thought stood out, at least people were asking the question. Ed Orgeron's here today at SEC Media Days representing LSU. People wondering, will he be here next year representing LSU? And there are a lot of questions. What's Joe Oliva's future, the athletic director? But LSU has a high expectation. If we're talking about that, they expect to win. And the pressure soon will be on Ed Orgeron, who has changes. He made a change with his offensive coordinator heading into this year and has a quarterback transfer coming in.
Yeah, he did. Matt Canada, who'd been a high-paid offensive coordinator, they did make a change there to keep the defensive coordinator. They're paying him about $2.5 million over the next 3 or 4 years. So the expectations at LSU, they're very high. But Ed Orgeron will tell you, well, they're no higher than my expectations. Well, that doesn't matter. You got to produce. And I think he's one of several SEC coaches on the hot seat. And my definition of hot seat is that if you don't have a very good year, you can get fired. And if he goes 7-5 this year, I don't think he keeps his job. And I still think he's got a concern at quarterback. They're bringing in the Ohio State transfer. If he's not really good and LSU doesn't have a dynamic running back like they've always had, I think this could be a tough year for LSU.
So day one is complete. 3 schools have gone: Kentucky, LSU, and Texas A&M. That means 11 schools still to go over the next 3 days here in Atlanta. SEC Football Media Days. Check out the podcast section on sportsradio.WNML.com as well as on the WNML app. We'll have coverage for you throughout all day over the next 3 days here on Sports Radio WNML.